Welcome to the Fleet Geeks podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoy the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook. Hello and welcome to this second podcast from Fleet Geeks with our wonderful guest, Beverley Bell. Thank you very much for joining me for a second time, Beverley. She joined me on last week's podcast. If you're listening to this as it's just come out, she was on with me on the previous podcast around maintenance that we were looking at in the industry, and now this week we're going to be looking at training. Beverley, thank you very much for coming back on the podcast again. Really appreciate you joining me and coming to talk about one of, I believe, a shared favourite subject, which is training, right? So Beverley kindly introduced herself in the previous podcast. Beverley is absolutely, I feel like I'm saying your name a lot of times at the moment, so maybe I'll stop. But she did a fantastic introduction. But just for the basis, if people are listening to this for the first time, Beverley, just please tell them about yourself, if that's okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for the invitation. I'm afraid I've still got the croaky voice. So I currently have a consulting company and also a training company, and the two go hand in hand, I think. I know it's a subject that's dear to your heart. I've worked in the industry since the 1980s, the late 1980s, in various capacities. And so I'm trying to put some of that knowledge to good use in developing training, and in developing training that's maybe a little bit different from some of the courses that are available now. It's a subject very dear to my heart, and it's one that I really enjoy. My bank manager doesn't enjoy it, but I enjoy it.
Right, okay, that's interesting. So with regards training in the sector, so that in our industry there's a wide range of training, right, from the sort of nuts and bolts early level training all the way through to, certainly tell me a bit more about your training offering. I think you do Transport Manager, refreshers, OLATs, Director OLATs. Is that your core focus? I don't think you do Driver CPC, do you?
We stopped doing Driver CPC, but that's a whole other question. We do, so Beverley Bell Training delivers TMCPC exam preparation courses for both goods and PSV. So I do some of that, but I use specialist trainers who actually know what they're doing. But I deliver some of those modules, and I love it. When I say my bank manager doesn't like it, obviously it's not as profitable as the work in consulting. That's the reference to it, which is often about drive to the bottom in the fees for some of the courses.
Sure.
And I'm sort of going off to tangent now, but I'll just make the point while I remember that some trainers out there will deliver really cheap Transport Manager CPC refresher courses. Doesn't mean they're any good, and that can just be ticking a box. There will be some that offer fabulous ones, but often it's a race to the bottom on price. So 2-day TMCPC refreshers, generally face to face. People like that. Delegates like it. We do one online a year. Excuse me, and then we do OLATs. We tend to do a lot of bespoke OLATs. Yeah. And then one of the things we do quite a lot of, which I enjoy, is director board training.
Sure.
And that's always a challenge. First of all, they will change their bespoke training dates 3 or 4 times because they're busy.
Yeah.
And then when you do manage to get them, you've got them for a fixed period of time, and you've got to get a message over very quickly, make them sit up and take notice without frightening them or without boring them or without making them think, how much is all this going to cost me?
Yeah.
And that is challenging work, but I enjoy that.
Yeah,
well, I enjoy all of the training, to be honest. Driver CPC we used to deliver, but quite frankly, we were too expensive because you can just go and pay 45 quid, tick a box, sit online, and you've got your certificate.
Yeah.
Now, that's a bit of a sweeping statement because there are many fabulous driver CPC trainers, and, they actively engage with the drivers in the classroom and they deliver high quality. But it's not our core market. Our core market is the managers.
Sure.
And then the final thing we do, and then I will shut up talking, is we don't just deliver training to transport managers. So in a large organisation, we would deliver training to the senior management team or the senior leadership team. And that's really beneficial because they say, now I know why you want those vehicles off the road for every 6 weeks for a day. And now I understand. And now I understand how important it is. I'll make sure it happens.
Sure.
Whereas before they're like, well, why have I got to do this? Can't it wait till next week? Yeah. So that's what we do.
Absolutely, yeah. So a great offering, by the way, Beverley. I think, to be fair, and we are much similar in the things we offer, obviously in a slightly different part of the country, and I quite enjoy delivering, particularly directors OLAT. I tend to not get involved with the longer transport manager initial training. I've got guys who do that are very, very good at what they do, and I think you need to be very well versed. And sometimes my challenge is that I'll think a little bit too far ahead, and I struggle to go back to the basics sometimes and the nuts and bolts of putting everything together for those people. I think that's a particular skill set from a training perspective. But one of the things I'll often find from a training perspective, and particularly from a consultancy auditing, is that we'll do an audit, and we've got a board of directors who, largely speaking, like you say, just see the operator license as this overhead, this cost that they don't really understand. A case in point, like you said, around not really understanding why the vehicle needs to go off the road for a day or so, and then maybe even longer in the preparation for an MOT. And they get particularly frustrated from that utilization perspective of this asset that they see. The beauty of doing that OLAT is it just brings everything to life, doesn't it? Which is what training is essentially. It's to bring this theoretical thing to life and what it really means for people, and obviously not only the consequences of getting it wrong, but also the performance benefits of getting it right and doing a really good job, and how that can benefit them. So with regards this section around training, we talked about potentially being a little bit controversial. So tell me a bit more about that, Beverley.
So it's all linked to the accreditation boards.
Okay.
So we deliver CILT.
Yep.
We don't have, is it pronounced Sega?
Yeah, I don't actually know. We do CILT as well, SILT. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a vice president of CILT, and I've been a staunch supporter of CILT. We know, don't we, that the TMCPC exam course doesn't teach you to be an effective transport manager.
That's absolutely true, and I can agree with that for sure.
And so what's the point? What's the point of it when, how many operators are going to learn how to take, sheep across to Europe? The very limited livestock sector, very limited. Accounts, financial management. How many transport managers ever get involved in accounts and financial management? 1 in 100, maybe?
Yeah.
So, what's the point of it? And I think that the TMCPC exam prep course is long overdue for radical change. Sure. Radical change. And there's nothing more dispiriting than preparing for an exam where you're never going to use that information again. It's really bad, I think. And so I would love to get involved in making sure that the changes that are made, because we're not in Europe anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are making it relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Making it relevant.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think it'd be good to see some level of work-based assessment as well, in role assessment, where we see how people are actually performing in the role. And I think that there's very little. The role of a transport manager is so influenced by their ability to deal with people and be good with people, and there is not even the slightest hint of any discussion around people skills and speaking to drivers and leading drivers effectively, which is such a fundamental part of the role, which I find interesting.
Yes, not just speaking to drivers, but listening to them. So I've just written an article for Motor Transport. It came out this week.
Yep.
And it's about the skills and competencies of a transport manager. Now, we tend to guard a lot of our content, our intellectual property content, quite zealously. And I thought, no, don't be silly, Beverley. why not share it? And one of the really exciting things we do on our 2-day course is, what are the skills and competencies of a transport manager?
Nice.
And so I've sort of turned that into an article in motor transport, and people and communication skills is up there. I think there's about 10 that are there, because you've got to be able to manage people. And I know from employing people that managing them can be a real challenge. This will surprise some of your listeners, but I'm actually a really soft employer. If my staff say, can I have tomorrow off, Beverley, because the sun's shining? I'll go, yeah, of course you can. Can I have a pay rise? Yes, of course you can. And can I have a longer lunch hour? Oh, that's fine. And my office manager's like, no, Beverley. And so, what we say in our courses is, to be an effective transport manager, you've got to have a bit of that killer instinct. Or you find somebody who has, and you say, well, I'm not going to deal with you for this, but Sue in the office is going to deal with it. Sue in the office having the right authority, obviously. And they go, oh my God, I don't want to see Sue in the office. I really don't. I promise I won't do it again. It's knowing who to help you in that management role.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think there's real value in that, actually, Beverley. So one of the things I do when I look at I outside of the sector, and I encourage transport managers to look at it because it's a really nice qualification. But I deliver the ILM Institute Leadership and Management Award in leadership and management. So, and that's a really nice initial introductory course to understanding management and leadership. And actually, they're contrasting skill sets. Leadership is, here's the vision and here's the direction, and there's often a softer approach with that because it's more visionary and required in any organization. And then there's this element of management which can be a little bit harder and more difficult. Then there's this element of must do this and must do that, and that kind of thing. Now, the role of a transport manager does include both and finding that balance. But you're absolutely right, it's almost quite useful to have almost like I suppose the simplest way of explaining it is good cop, bad cop.
Yes, absolutely.
But there's a real benefit to having that in any organization, because it offers what balance, and we need balance, don't we? We need the person. Sometimes someone needs an arm around them, and sometimes they need really robust, challenging. And sometimes that's difficult to do with both hats for one person sometimes.
Mr. Nice and Mr. Nasty, or Mrs. Nice and Mr. Nasty, or whatever it is. Absolutely. Because the other key thing is that being a transport manager or a fleet manager or whatever, you don't do it all yourself, you delegate.
Sure.
And then it's making sure that you know how to make sure they're doing their jobs, because that can be a challenge. One of my favorite slides is ABC: assume nothing, believe nobody, and check everything. Have you done it? Yes, of course I've done it. Show me. Oh, I was just going to. I was just going to do it. I thought by the time you asked me, I'd have done it.
Yeah.
So training's important, and driver CPC training. What a waste of time that is, in my view.
Sure.
And I don't want to devalue training, but I think that it's being done for the sake of it.
Hello, it's Shani from Flagship Partners. We are really proud to sponsor the Fleet Geeks podcast. If you need expert advice or training for your fleet business, make Flagship Partners your first choice. We are really excited to announce the launch of our Transport Manager Academy. With expert development for fleet leaders, we offer fully accredited initial Transport Manager CPC training, CPC refresher, and operator license awareness training, as well as mentoring, support, and professional development beyond the qualification. Our vision is to develop elite fleet professionals,
where it should be much more specific, and there are much better ways that drivers can learn how to do a particular aspect of their job.
Sure.
So I know they're obviously out for consultation.
Mm-hmm. I was hanging in there to see how you were going to sort of back up the it being a waste of time. And I think obviously it's something we offer driver CPC training, but one of the things we're around the way we offer it, and I've never, from an offer perspective, I've never looked, ever since COVID came in and we really saw the 30, 35, 40 pounds a course merchants really gear up, and I looked at that and I said, I just thought you need 20 people on a course to even justify paying somebody
Well,
to
exactly.
deliver that, and you can't have 20 people on an online forum in an interactive capacity where there's any value created.
You can, but it's not actually doing anything. They're just sitting there ticking a box.
Exactly that. So one of the ways that we approach the driver CPC process is we tend to focus on looking to partner with operators and go, we'll do your drivers on a group basis, and let's focus on the things they need. And it's tricky with the current regime, which is why I agree with you that it's largely a waste of time, and that is because it's so regimented the way it's managed, and that you need to have done this by this point during the day, and you need to have done that point, and someone's going to come in and check you, and it's a 7 hour period. Now, I personally can't think of anything worse than sitting in a classroom for 7 hours having to listen to somebody talk without getting some level of interaction, engagement, doing stuff. And I think that process isn't beneficial for drivers either. I think certainly a shorter form of training. I think fundamentally we need to look at ongoing professional development of drivers. That's a non-negotiable, but it needs to be in a much more accessible and valuable format than the current driver CPC regime. Am I sort of in the same direction as where you are with that,
I
Beverley?
completely agree with that. We had our accreditation, we chose to give it up. We got sick to death of people coming along because of my name, quite frankly. We were audited all the bloody time, and I shouldn't say that, I shouldn't use that word bloody. I should just say we were audited all the time. I think there was an element of, oh, let's go and see what they're doing. And the forms that you have to fill in, and you've got to deliver this and you've got to deliver that at this particular time, doesn't add any value. It's ticking a box for the sake of it. And we do get delegates who ring up and say, can I do a TMCPC refresher? Yes. Can I have my driver CPC hours? No. Oh, well, I'm not coming then. Fine, don't come.
Yeah.
But our courses are better because we're not. And I know of somebody who was running an OLAC course as part of his development for driver CPC course. And he was doing this very specifically, and he'd had it approved for years and years and years by JOUT. And then DVSA were asked to approve it, and they said, we want you to change it. Okay. We want you to take out all that reference to traffic commissioners. There's far too much reference in there to traffic commissioners. We want you to put this in instead. And he said, no, it's an OLAC course. And in the end, he just voted with his feet and left and said, I'm not going to be part of it because it doesn't add any value.
Yeah.
So I completely agree. Why can't drivers be trained in different ways rather than sitting in a classroom? Because the attention span is too short for all of us anyway in the virtual world.
Yeah, absolutely. We've not got the attention span. I think the ideal learning experience potentially is as little as 90 minutes to a couple of hours.
Definitely.
Ultimately. It is interesting with driver CPC. We've just been through our centre audit as well, and that happens every 5 years, and literally we've just been through that. But it's really interesting what you say, because we're on the same path as you with regards that there are competitors out there who offer the Transport Manager refresher and OLAT as a driver CPC, and will offer driver CPC hours. And I got asked the question literally on Tuesday. I'm going to Oxford to deliver an OLAT to a group of office-based workers who help run this operation. And the chap messaged me and said, a couple of the guys have got driver CPC. Is it okay to put it through as driver CPC? And I said, it's possible, but no. I'm not going to, because they've got a list of objectives. The guy who's booked us has got a list of objectives he wants to achieve, and it will require some focus during that day to focus on those elements. And there's absolutely no way that I'll be able to do that with an auditor present and maintain the 7 hours and keep it interesting and what have you. And he's already said to me, he goes, well, we want to start at 10 and be finished by 4. And I'm like, well, It's just never going to work, right? So anyway, and I'm going to struggle to deliver that in 6 hours with so many people, but let's see how we get on. There might have to be some homework for them to go away and do some extra reading. But ultimately, you never know. You go into a room full of 20 people, you don't know what questions you're going to get asked either. You've got your materials, haven't you? And then you don't really know where the conversation's going to go. But generally speaking, that conversation is going to be super valuable to them because it's going to be really relevant to their role. So you then facilitate this conversation, and then you might go, well, you've told me I've got to finish at 4, and this is where we've got to. So I'm going to have to record you some videos, or I'm going to have to come back another day and focus on the other elements and see where we go. But
and
it's challenging.
It's hard for the trainers because often some of the drivers will sit there, arms folded, frowning at them, going, "You can't teach me anything, love." I mean, one of the things I did love the other day, just on one of our training courses, I think I probably put it on LinkedIn, was where he was what I'd call an old-fashioned traditional transport manager.
Yeah.
He knew far more than anybody in the room, including Nick Denton and myself. And he said to me, "Well, you can't drive trucks, love, can you?" "No, I can't." "Well, therefore you can't be a transport manager." Okay, let's just unpick that. And it was really interesting seeing how all the other delegates in the room tackled him. Now, we have some little animals that we take around on our courses. We have a giraffe, obviously for bridge strikes, and we have a zebra for crossings, and pelicans and toucans and all of that. So we've now got a little dinosaur. And we're going to take the little dinosaur around with us. But there is that, well, you can't drive a truck or a bus or a coach, so what do you know? There's nothing you can teach me. And one of the delegates on the course was a young, very young female, really bright. She was a transport manager and she got her lorry license. And I said, "Why?" She said, "Just to show them I could."
Yeah. You'd be amazed how many people I come across that have done that. There's so many that just go because they're so fed up of hearing the, well, you don't know because you can't drive. And that is something that we need to move away from in the industry because it's been fundamentally proven wrong so many times. I think it almost, by someone stating it as a challenge, demonstrates their lack of understanding of what it really takes to do the role effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The other course we are going to look at delivering is, how to be an effective transport manager.
Sure.
Which is different from a refresher.
Yeah.
But no, I enjoy it. I mean, there are some organisations where it's delivered, they deliver the TM CPC refreshers and you say, well, actually, what qualifications have they got to deliver them?
Yeah.
And that then comes down, my other sort of bête noire is the marking of the exam papers.
Yeah.
And it does annoy me when the delegates are not given the mark, so they don't know where they've failed.
Yeah.
And for me, the appeal process is manifestly unfair.
Yeah.
And then the only other bit on training for me is there are a lot of people who take online exams now. Do you have delegates who take online exams?
No, ours is all in person now on paper still currently.
My advice to you would be keep doing it in the classroom on paper, because we've had too many cases where people have done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Or allegedly done something wrong, and they just say, "Oh, it's all void and you're not getting a mark and we've disqualified you." Excuse me?
Wow.
Excuse me? And it needs to be, and to be fair to CILT, they are now giving more information about it. So I've said we will just do face-to-face, not face-to-face classroom, paper exams, because they sweat blood, sweat and tears, don't they, for weeks and weeks. And they want to get their best possible chance in the exam.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to add a point, because you said there about the training transport managers to do the transport manager role. Now, I have no financial interest in this next suggestion, but I know it's a very good course and certainly something to have a look at. Tom Tom Reddy, who is a chap I know from out Coventry, Birmingham way, has written a course called Transport Manager Unlocked, which is a 2-day post-Transport Manager qualification course that literally will go into, if you've never worked in a transport business before, he has a vehicle and you'll go and walk around the vehicle and explain what a 4x2 is and a 6x2, and he'll go through literally the nuts and bolts of how to create a maintenance system and all of the different things that a manager actually has to do. And the reason I, even though there's no financial interest for me, because it isn't about that, I raise that because actually the more yourself, ourselves, people like Tom start to go, the transport manager's not fit for purpose, hopefully someone will end up listening and go, and actually people are creating courses that are effective at doing training transport managers to do the role rather than the CPC qualification. I think that needs to be really on the radar, which is what you said at the beginning of the podcast.
Can I just say one more controversial thing?
Sure.
One of the issues that we have is that the Traffic Commission has set, because originally when I was a senior, I wrote the wording around the trainers.
Sure.
And was very careful to make sure that it doesn't just refer to trade associations.
Yes.
And that it refers to people that are accredited to deliver the Transport Manager CPC courses, so that they can then do the 2-day courses. There's a lot of sloppiness that comes out from the Traffic Commissioner's office that says you can have a 2-day refresher course delivered by Logistics UK or the RHA, or sometimes they say earned recognition auditors. Well, that's nonsense, because this is about training.
Sure.
And I always push back. And for me, just as in our previous discussions in the previous podcast, I said in the Bell household, big isn't necessarily beautiful. It's the same with the trade associations. And I love Richard Smith to bits. And I love, got his name now because I've got dementia. I haven't got dementia, but you know what I'm saying. David Wells to bits.
Sure.
But a lot of delegates who come on our courses, and I know when they come on your courses and some of the other independents, they say, God, it's a lot better than the one I attended, run by one of the trade associations. And what I'd really like to see is a big sort of consortium of really good training companies all get together under one brand, and people think there's a real alternative, because it's only when they come that they realise it's better.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's quite controversial, and probably Richard and David won't speak to me ever again, but
I think Beverley, you've hit the nail on the head. It'd be good to disrupt that. It'd be good to disrupt that a little bit more than what the independents are currently. And I it's my pet hate that the official communication comes out and names Logistics UK and RHA and doesn't name any other options apart from another independent or whatever the wording is that it is. I find that a bit frustrating and disheartening sometimes, because it kind of keeps the wheels turning, and it keeps those trade associations busy and full of people. You know, they're packing out their 20-person Transport Manager CPC courses and refreshers and what have you, without having to go and work or deliver a great experience for it, because the business is just churning all the time.
Yes, and I want to be very careful, because clearly the trade associations do have their place. They do deliver some excellent courses. Sure. They have some fabulous trainers, but there is a real alternative, and I think people maybe don't think there are. So that's a separate conversation, Pete. You and I need over a gin and tonic.
That sounds fantastic. Appreciate it, Beverley. Beverley, it's been wonderful to have you on the second podcast. Thank you for joining me. Today we've been talking about training. In the last session, if you haven't listened to it, please do tune into that one. We talked about maintenance. And next week, upcoming, we've got mental health, which is one of my favourite subjects to talk about. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to joining you with that very shortly, Beverley. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.